And joining me now in this broadcast is former Ambassador of India to the United States, Ambassador Taranjit Singh Sandhu joins us. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. India-US relations have evolved significantly over the past years, particularly during your tenure. How do you think Donald Trump's potential return, in fact, he is in power, how are these issues impacting key areas like defense, trade, and technology? And with the two leaders meeting in DC this time around, in their interesting, political successes, it's Modi 3.0 and Trump 2.0.
So, as you know, that for Prime Minister Modi, President Trump is not new. During what is normally described as Trump 1.0, a Prime Minister had handled him, and they had developed a very good rapport, which has continued. And both the leaders have often spoken about it. This time around, I just want to underline that do keep in mind that President Trump, in Trump 2.0, came on largely a domestic vote on the domestic economy, on the domestic law and order, crime, etc., which is linked to immigration and deportations, etc. So, therefore, a lot of his focus, and especially the initial days, and especially some of the executive orders, are actually focused on domestic. So, keeping that in mind, I think what was very significant was that Prime Minister Modi was invited to come in the first 3 weeks, and they were able to have a good, candid meeting, and a lot flew out of the good equation they share, so that they could speak to each other very frankly.
Absolutely. And Ambassador, Donald Trump had a strong personal rapport with Prime Minister Modi during his previous presidency. We have seen events like Howdy Modi, Namaste Trump. Yesterday, again, those optics were on display. Everything seemed to be perfect, lots of camaraderie and bromance as well. How do such personal relationships between world leaders shape diplomatic ties, and what do you think they will play in terms of long-term strategic partnership of the two countries?
So they definitely have a role to play because, look, the challenges are always there, but those get converted into opportunities. And I think you mentioned about Ahmedabad. It's very interesting since I was the ambassador here, and in 2020 Feb, President Trump had cancelled his visit because of the impending elections, and there was pressure on through his team for him to do the visit later. And at that time, he had what he always is very fond of calling that I'll give you a good offer, basically 3 days, 3 cities, and in November. But we wanted him to come there. And at that time, I had mentioned to him that Prime Minister Modi is taking a great interest in having the civic reception in Ahmedabad. So when I said Ahmedabad, immediately he said Modi hometown. And when I mentioned about the civic reception, he said the world's largest stadium. And 130,000, he remembered this time. So President Trump has a very sharp memory. And I think this personal rapport between the two will certainly play a role. And it has played, if you look at the joint statement, and you look at very clear 6 areas that have been identified in that, it points to that. We have the defense, we have investments and trade, we have energy security, technology innovation, multilateral cooperation, and people to people. Each one of those is a movement forward. And as it has been described, there'll be actually transformative changes.
And Ambassador Sandhu, both Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have cultivated strong nationalist narratives in their respective countries. In fact, Prime Minister Modi spoke about MEGA, Make India Great Again, just as MAGA is the joining force of the entire Trump narrative. How does this ideological alignment impact diplomatic engagements, and can it really translate into concrete policy gains for India?
So, look, frankly, both of them were comfortable enough to say in front of each other that they follow the national interest. In fact, Prime Minister Modi said that, like President Trump looks after America's national interest, I look after India's national interest. And I think both understood each other very well. And that's what I mean here. Now, I would say that in this particular interaction, 5 things stand out for me. I think India has been quite smart in handling those 5 could turn into big advantages. One, we require huge energy. We have huge energy requirements, as they say. So more cheap oil and gas, this will be a key for our growth. Second, nuclear energy. The small modular reactors, they could be the future. And US is a manufacturer of that, and they want to sell it to us. Then partnership in AI and chips. AI, so much has been spoken about. India, US are actually natural partners, and they are working very, very closely. So if you look at the joint statement, there are several initiatives, including the National Science Foundation, led by Panchanathan, who just got the Padma Shri. Now, fourth, of course, there is a talk of merit-based immigration. And this helps H-1Bs. It also helps 300,000 Indian kids who are studying in the United States, most of them 2/3 in STEM areas. And finally, look, we have been able to get the trade negotiations started. There's a very clear indication that within 6 months, we should be moving towards a treaty or what is called a trade agreement. I think that's a big plus. But of course, look, the challenge is there, and we have to play it very smartly. Both the officials will look after their interests, but that's where a common ground will be found.
My last question to you, India has carefully so far balanced its relations with global powers, including the US, Russia, and China. How might a second Trump presidency affect India's diplomatic strategy, especially in the context of Indo-Pacific and BRICS? There is also an indication of a potential intervention, as Donald Trump said during the course of that press conference when asked specifically about China.
So, look, you have obviously pointed to a very interesting area. Now, China and the US, I would say, politics has become quite an important aspect because, look, China, there is negativity amongst the people. They see it as a competition. Now, President Trump has to negotiate within that. He has to work out within that. So there are 2 opinions within Trump presidency 2.0. One, of course, is the strategic side. And you can see the Secretary of State, NSA, and many other strong people on China who have taken important strategic positions. But you also see the commercial side. You have seen the TikTok. So there are commercial interests who want things to open up. And I must mention to you that do keep in mind that President Trump has a long memory. And he holds what he calls China virus as responsible for him losing in 2020. And that is reflected if you look at the statements of the current CIA chief and others. So it's going to be a combination. Now, as far as India is concerned, look, I think the very fact that the focus on Quad, one of the first meetings that took place after Secretary of State was sworn in, was of the Quad. All the Quad foreign ministers were invited and given prominent places. So, and if you look at even our joint statement, there's a lot of mention of that. So I think, look, you can't expect complete, what we'll say is that US will declare a war on China. Of course not. I mean, it has to negotiate its relationship within these challenges. But I don't think it will in any way negatively impact United States-India relationship. I think that partnership will get strengthened. And it's also reflected in number of areas, even if you look at technology, etc., and look at even the defense side, you can see that unsaid word about the strategic understanding between United States and India are very much there.
All right, Ambassador Sandhu, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.